In my last video, I detailed what if Pain were to attempt his assault on each generation of Hokage, and hence Konoha. So, what if the Hokage and their reigns were to face the even more formidable enemy of Obito Uchiha, the Masked Man, the strongest Uchiha since Madara, whose ability is so profound he can genjutsu the full 9 tails in just his 3 tomoe alone, and battle the 4th Hokage in a battle so grueling that Minato would later tell Naruto that Obito was a much more extraordinary enemy in comparison to Pain. So, could each Hokage and their respective forces from their age, including their top Jonin and support Shinobi, actually stop the Masked Man and the Nine Tails attack? Beginning with Obito, one thing needs to be established, and it's that even though Minato did win the Battle of Speed according to the Chapter 502 synopsis statement, Obito and his accomplishments that night were still extremely impressive and would be nearly impossible to be replicated by nearly anyone else on the planet at that time. For example, when Minato tested Obito's speed for his trap, Obito is capable of moving relatively to Minato, and he's even capable of catching the arm of a more serious Minato when on the Hokage rock, where Minato would turn his body and slice the kunai through his entire head, where Obito could quickly catch the arm and even hold it without a sign of struggle, despite Minato showing tension lines when trying to escape. And when considering this is the same Minato that could plant his feet and actually fully stop the leftover Nine Tails from pushing forward, this is some really solid stock for Obito in both departments of speed and power. But all of this would later make Minato force the concession to Naruto that he will need to master the Nine Tails power and gain extraordinary power to stop Obito, despite Naruto currently fighting Pain. And this master the Nine Tails rhetoric is actually only in reference to KCM2 Naruto, seeing as any previous form prior, including KCM1 and even the much faster version of KCM 1.5, are only ever referred to as Naruto having control over the Nine Tails rather than Naruto outright mastering the Nine Tails power, which practically gets confirmed when Kurama, after Naruto activates KCM2, he states that this is what Minato intended for Naruto to have in order to beat this Masked Man. In the last scene of KCM2 prior to that, Naruto was directly believed by Kakashi, who had been fighting dead Shinobi all day, to be Hokage Minato, showing how Minato is currently most certainly a KCM2 level threat, and Obito was able to understandably press and draw fear from Minato. Furthermore, Minato could actually blitz all 4 original Hokage to the battlefield, despite them being called the strongest soldiers, placing them as a unit above KCM2 Naruto. So yeah, if it isn't clear, Obito is not lacking behind any of the Hokage, despite what you may have been led to believe. And although Obito is a physical monster, his weapons and abilities are just as impressive and are very complementary to his set of abilities. The first of which would be, of course, Kamui. And I mean, listen, we've all heard it before. Everybody knows that Kamui is an ability that Obito has to passively phase through any attack he chooses, with his intangibility being his primary mode of touch, such as when he goes to hold Rin and passes straight through her. With Kamui, Obito can grab you with the chains, which he uses in the battle with Minato, which are also so strong that they further the earlier points of Obito's raw strength, as Obito can pull them so tight that Minato can't escape, again showing his superior strength. These could catch you off guard and are among the numerous weapons that Obito can utilize to combat an opponent, which would also include every other tool from Madara's cave that he ended up bringing to the war, such as his giant shuriken, which he can blast out of Kamui, and these are attacks that Obito is actually confident will hit KCM2 Naruto, despite that Naruto being relative to this Obito maybe even faster in some instances in terms of combat speed, showing how these shuriken are like typical projectiles and are faster than the user, like the Biju suppressing rods, which he can also use as well. And among Obito's most useful abilities would certainly be his wood style attacks. He was able to fully utilize the wood style when enraged, to the point where the 4th data book calls it the highest level of ninjutsu of blood-shedding ability among the wood style. And while you may lend skepticism to Obito and him actually having access to this still, having lost Zetsu, this might not be true. While yes, he no longer had the Zetsu armor supporting his body, he does still have tons of Zetsu cells, as even when Obito does get his left arm blown off, it falls off like a Zetsu arm, despite not being from his Hashirama cell infused side. So maybe Obito grabbed some extra Zetsu cells prior to the fight, or he's just always like this, and that's what I could credit it to. The reason as to why this is while yes, only half of Obito's completely Zetsu Hashirama cells, the other half of his body also seems to have a large amount seeping into it, seeing as when Obito first attempts to escape Madara's cave, he notices that his arms can't even withstand the force at which he's trying to exert, and then much later when fighting Fu and Torne, Obito can literally just snap his arm off with grip strength. So take it as you will, but the point is Obito should still have the wood style. He utilizes it in the war arc, and the Rinnegan should have literally no bearing on whether or not he can use wood style. And even just prior to the war, he could have used a 6-pass rod like he did on his rampage, if you interpret this pipe to be a 6-pass rod rather than exactly that, a pipe, as it is colored differently in the black and white renditions of the manga, but whatever. The wood style and its abilities is obviously profound and is referred to as the ability of God according to Yamato's databook file, so when battling the Hokage, if he's not in some battle against the fastest shinobi of his age who has the ability to think and relocate, many of these abilities, including the wood style bindies, and potentially even the wood release cutting technique that allows him to summon any piece of branch or wood surrounding him and send them flying at an opponent with just a thought, and if you remember, he'll be fighting each Hokage in the forest where he battled Minato, this is ridiculous. The only stipulation to the cutting technique being activated would be Obito needing to be maybe in an enraged state, as the 4th databook does imply that, but any other basic wood style ability like suppression binds or spikes are very much valid and could put down the Hokage. Wood style is constantly shown with both Hashirama and Yamato to be faster than the user as well, so this is likely why Obito was struggling to evade Naruto's larger attacks in KCM2, but could catch him with the wood style. Hashirama used a little, the wood style to match Madara's Susanoo, which is faster than Madara, who Hashirama's taijutsu is stated to be equal to in the 4th databook. So essentially, a pretty fast level of attack that's just beyond Obito is what the wood style really would be here, which is pretty cracked, obviously, right? So yeah, there are several more points for Obito, including Genjutsu and 6-pass rods, but those can be brought up when relevant to certain interactions. But let's first begin with Hashirama, our first Hokage. Also, if you guys could, hit the subscribe button, give me to 10k, please. I'm literally recording this while I'm sick, but I'd really appreciate it. Anyway, now, opening up with Hashirama, this is actually one of the first times in any of my Hokage videos, maybe even the first time, that Hashirama generally will not completely stomp the opponent in a 1-minute section. Now, firstly, it's important to establish that in order to prevent this from being a Hokage level Tobirama plus Hokage level Hashirama versus Obito, I'm going to argue that Hashirama's strongest soldier, Tobirama, will simply be trying to mitigate the damage throughout the village with the aid of other up-and-coming Senju and Uchiha shinobi. As for Obito, like the original timeline, he will be fighting Hashirama while Kurama rampages Konoha. And for Hashirama, he's certainly going to be slightly faster and stronger than Obito whilst in base, due to Hashirama being a rival to even an EMS Madara plus Kurama, making this conversation more so that who is better at utilizing Kurama. And while that does go to Madara, Obito's method is certainly valid, and he actually completely separated Kurama from himself, forcing Hashirama to worry about a battlefield on 2 fronts. And this Obito is very similar to Madara in how he can actually genjutsu the full 9 tails in just his 3 tomoe, like Madara did. Kurama even says "you" when he first sees Obito, implying that he thought this probably could have been Madara. Minato also briefly entertains this idea of him being Madara in their bout. The reason as to why this is possibly an option is Obito is around that KCM2 level, and Madara is just above that level, seeing as both he and Hashirama are equal in the war arc, and this is stated in as the same for Hashirama's Wood Dragon, as it's stated to be on par with the full 9 tails, a KCM2 level threat. As the full 9 tails is just chakra, so is Naruto's KCM2 avatar, but the only difference is Naruto's KCM2 avatar is only comprised of the leftover half, which is why the paw shrinks much more than half, meaning that the full Kurama is KCM2 level at least, and therefore Madara would be as well. Outside of that and their basic relativity, Obito's arsenal is what would primarily allow for him to actually capitalize on certain abilities despite being physically inferior to Hashirama. If he emerges, then Obito could try to clash wood style with him or even try to catch him in the chains, although I think this strategy is unlikely, and I think Hashirama's superior dexterity will give him the ability to get out of the chains and combat most of Obito's attack, like any fire style for example, since the wood dragon is actually much faster than himself, and like the other constructs including the wood golem, could plant so much pressure on Obito that materializing for any offensive attack would be difficult. Although this pressure would require a ton of energy from Hashirama, like if you were to try the deity gaze to destroy Obito or the miniature wood dragon, Obito would simply slip right through both and would likely even offer up a counterattack of something akin to his Biju suppression rods, which even without the curse seal activated could completely pierce the more dense part of the Eight Tails, including his shoulder and back, and even one of Hashirama's more treasured abilities like the Deep Forest Bloom could even fail due to Obito actually just relocating out of Kamui in a separate location, away from the poison gas and not being hit by the wood either, making Hashirama just waste a ton of more chakra. And even once Hashirama finally does land something definite on Obito, Izanagi is always an option, which would last for probably 10 minutes, and we know that if Hashirama is in Sage mode, he would probably keep it on to go fight the full Nine Tails, as without it, it is possible but incredibly difficult, as the last time Hashirama battled it in base, he was left with his eye gassed shut and his face bleeding, so this could allow for him to actually sense when Obito re-emerges from Izanagi whilst fighting Kurama in the Sage mode. Hashirama is also just one of the fighters outside of Minato who really does have the arsenal to take him down and suppress him with the wood style. So yeah, I mean, Hashirama, even in these Storm games, which could be implied to be canon, actually does have a separation seal, although it's slightly less advanced than Minato's. He does still have that if he needs to use it on Obito. But yeah, for Hashirama, I think he definitely does win, but the manner isn't quite as easy as he usually would have, so I would give him the victory like 8 out of 10 times. Following Hashirama with his brother, things become a little more interesting as usual. Firstly, his Shinobi would likely be a younger Hiruzen who hasn't quite reached his prime yet, but is still referred to as the most accomplished of Tobirama's escort squad, and he also does have talent that's exceeding Tobirama's from childhood, and probably has some jutsu even surpassing those of Tobirama. Now, the rest of Tobirama's team would likely consist of the others from this squad, like a Danzo, Kagami, and other characters like that, and potentially a Mito, but the real meat and potatoes here is Tobirama. And while sure, Tobirama isn't, Big Brother Hashirama level in Sage mode or anything, he is still more than capable of keeping up with Hashirama in raw combat speed, as shown in their legendary bout with Old Man Hiruzen, which is befitting with Madara's statement in the war arc about Tobirama being pathetic and far from the shinobi he once was, a shinobi who Madara states used to boast the fastest speed of any shinobi, which would include both Madara and Hashirama, but likely only in their base forms, as with wood style, Hashirama could completely wrap around Jubito when Tobirama would just put up a hand sign, and the Susanoo is equal to that and is much faster than himself. Madara would also likely be accounting for his ability to change the plane of speed with his flying Thunder God, which allows for him to react to things much faster than himself, like he did with Renegon Madara in the war. And Tobirama boasting the fastest speed of his era and being faster than both base Hashirama and base Madara with FTG should stand pretty firm without just prior to his death. And whilst older, Danzo actually remarks that there's no greater shinobi in Konoha, the strongest village, than Tobirama. And this is befitting in the aforementioned battle with Hiruzen. The bystanding Anbu state, "This is what it takes to be Hokage," after seeing Tobirama's one-signed water wall that blocked Hiruzen's dragon flame bombs, which are actually called the strongest fire style in the world according to the anime profile guides. And since they are coming from Hiruzen, who stated 3 times in the first Van book and by Kabuto to hold the reputation or outright be the strongest Kage in the world at this time, this would also mean that Tobirama is too. Even while terribly weakened, he could still just stand at the peak of the world generations after his death due to his water style alone. The second data book furthers this speed and water style mastery by stating that, quote, he is prideful of his superior combat ability, and with the water release jutsu, which he was especially skillful at, he was unexpectedly revived in the present day to defeat the third, which put fear into the people of Konoha, showing how his speed was so monstrous and the potency of his water style was just so scary and even remained so powerful that when revived, the shinobi of Konoha were actually frightened. at the second Hokage's might with water style, which has always been a specialty for Lord Second, with how the 1 Decade 100 Ninja Guide actually remarks that Tobirama's water style in battle was so legendary he can even create ice tsunamis in the most extreme conditions, with him also potentially possessing a supposed lance that's capable of cutting down anything in the world by the time this guide releases, which is a 10th anniversary guide of the manga, which should be chapter 456 or the start of the Kage Summit. But since other 10-year anniversary guides like Fanbook 2 take manga canon material from within the Kage Summit, it could extend even later, maybe Sasuke Susanoo, stuff like that. But that's neither here nor there, as I brought that up in discussions like in my previous video, along with its other water style like the Severing Wave, which has been praised as Tobirama's top water style jutsu due to it being able to cut the god tree roots. However, I would disagree with this sentiment due to Hiruzen's Enma and even Samehada being able to do the same, which would also imply some high ends for Obito's durability, as well as while in Orange Mask, Obito can tank Suigetsu's Executioner's Blade sword swing on the forearm, bro hitting those hammer curls, but this would imply that he could also do the same as this Samehada, who's even more durable than Kisame, as shown in the B fight, due to something my buddy TG brought up, and it's that the Databook 2 glossary notes that, to an extent, Samehada's strength rivals the Executioner's Blade, which implies a level of superiority for the Executioner's Blade. And I mean, this would just be from, that which we know that the Severing Wave just really won't be slicing through Obito or anything like that, and it would really have to be either the Lance or the more discreet Heavenly Weeping Jutsu, which would be more useful in this scenario, as the Heavenly Weeping is an intense buildup of chakra in the mouth to then spew water style out and snipe at the opponent's vital spots when they are sure of victory, befitting of Tobirama's MO. And if you are under the interpretation that with A, Madara couldn't dodge these and needed to block it with the Susanoo, or B, these are too strong not to block without the Susanoo, then by all means, they're nuts, and this could pose a serious problem for Obito during their encounter if Obito does believe he's beaten Tobirama or begins to taunt him like he does with Fu and Torne when complementing their abilities to deduce his abilities and formulate a potential counter. And deducing Obito's abilities for a character like Tobirama shouldn't be arduous or anything like that, as he's not only capable of leading a platoon of elite shinobi against a literal shinobi god in Jibito, but also fully developed Konoha even through Hashirama's era as well. As the second databook notes in Hiruzen's file that, quote, the third made an effort to develop Konoha, the village that the first and second made, which attributed the village and it being made by both Hashirama and Tobirama, which fits with his political acumen that guided Konoha's diplomacy through Hashirama's era. Yeah, deducing Obito's Kamui and how to counter it should be very possible for Tobirama to accomplish. Konan deduces it, Fu and Torne deduce it and develop even a counter for it, and of course Minato does it and realizes the perfect counter would be through speed and catching him off guard with FTG. This is also a good time to open the interpretation of Tobirama and his ability to use the Bringer of Darkness, as well he does use it in the anime and is listed as a user for it in the 4th databook when Hashirama doesn't have the release. This jutsu is it's probably not the monster genjutsu that it's been made out to be, and probably wasn't even meant to combat Madara or someone like that. For example, it could be more likely other Uchiha shinobi like Setsuna Uchiha, who the 3rd databook has a mini character file on and calls him basically a rebel Uchiha who disliked the way Tobirama was running Konoha and attempted a coup d'etat. So genjutsu is a no-go, but regardless, when, objective medians highlight what makes Tobirama so good, why is he so crazy, what they always do, like the 2nd databook previously did, they usually state it's his speed and his water style. So the battle could even more so be like Tobirama's water lance or kunai that would eventually kill Obito through his overwhelming terrain changing with water dragons, maybe tsunamis, and speed. Well, maybe it's possible. It's very possible with both Tobirama and Obito being somewhere beyond KCM 1.5 Naruto and under KCM 2 Naruto. However, when it comes to these close stat matches, the Kamui is devastating. It makes finding adequate win cons nearly impossible, and I think Obito should be able to rely on that for anything that possibly overwhelms him, which won't be too much since he does have the fire style like the Bomb Blast Dance, which is actually equal to Madara's in the War Arc, and other jutsu like, again, the large scale shuriken or the Biju rods to put equal, if not more pressure on Tobirama, and him needing to just rely more on the FTG to escape many tricks and binds. This would mean for me that it kind of just lead to the ultimate conclusion of Tobirama getting overwhelmed. The only real way I wouldn't see this being the case is if you again subscribe to the Heavenly Weeping being just godly and have him having speed beyond peak EMS Madara and stage mode Hashirama, which I obviously don't. So my boy can't get past here and loses to Obito like 7 out of 10 times. After Tobirama, we have Hiruzen, and since this is a follow-up video, the last one from that, Hiruzen will kind of just be in his pre-Uchiha massacre state where he's still old and weaker than his prime state, but does still have many notable shinobi to help aid in the attack, including the likes of Itachi, Shisui, Fugaku, and Kakashi. And I'm going to be very blunt here at the start. Yes, Hiruzen's pretty powerful and should stand even stronger than his mentally afflicted and older version that combated Orochimaru, but he still isn't really going to be able to touch Obito whatsoever. Hiruzen believed that Orochimaru in part 1, before seeing him, was actually going to be so powerful that he couldn't stop him due to Orochimaru's insane talent that's been put to use through training in the last decade, but despite this, Hiruzen was still ultimately confident in Minato being capable of taking him out. This aligns with the chapter 238 synopsis statement of Minato possessing unrivaled strength, and yet Obito could rival that, which would also highlight how Obito should be greater than even a much older Itachi than the one who, like Shisui and Ko, will be needed to aid Hiruzen if they want any chance at survival. Itachi during his time has yet to gain his MS and get stronger to the point where he would be seen as an opponent by Obito after cutting through Obito's aura. Shisui's best line of skilling would be through how Shisui could actually put up a right hand tiger sign and body flicker so fast that Danzo can't see him when Danzo rips out his eye, which shot adrenaline through Shisui's body, through his veins, and temporarily stunned the Aburame paralysis poison. Danzo's left eye perception has almost zero reason to change from then to the Kage summit, especially when accounting for all the Sharingan he gains, draining his reserves over time, meaning that Shisui should be beyond the version of Sasuke, who is stated to be exponentially stronger than the form who battled the Raikage and Mizukage. Danzo also could perceive all of Sasuke's higher moves, including the Susanoo arrow and other attacks like that, so no wonder the official birthday column state that Shisui was gaining a reputation as Shisui the Body Flicker, hence to why Killer B recognized his name and valor and stated that he was the strongest Uchiha capable of using Genjutsu. It also states that Shisui was seen as the rising star for Konoha after Minato and the Sani were no longer being accounted for. However, scaling vastly above even this Sasuke and his arrows isn't something foreign to Obito, as Kakashi can actually completely outspeed these arrows with his Kamui, and Obito actually is able to put his arm up at the same speed that Kakashi can activate Kamui, showing how Obito's basic combat speed is likely even far beyond the Susanoo arrow. So, Shisui will not be contending with Obito in terms of speed, and regardless if you think that he has the Susanoo or not, based on, whether it be Kishimoto drawing the game design or the Naruto Top 99 artwork, Obito should just be able to Kamui around it and outspeed any attack coming from it. Now, while the Kodo could work, it's almost a last-ditch option for Shisui if he ever uses it at all. Shisui's Genjutsu is the only one that would work on Obito, as Fugaku's Genjutsu is almost entirely ambiguous, and at best, if you use the anime filler, he does just have a similar feat to Obito in controlling Kurama, but Obito actually controls the full thing compared to the leftover half. Hiruzen's jutsu arsenal, albeit, is really impressive, as it's stated numerous times to be, more than what most people know, that he actually does indeed possess, or at least have the knowledge and capability to wield every technique in Konoha. But in terms of his highlighted specialty and things like the mud wall, he could potentially stop Obito's shuriken and whatnot, since Kakashi could do that in the war, but that's neither here nor there. A fire style battle between them is probably fruitless, seeing as Obito has basically just much greater showings along with the wood style, which has almost been neglected so far. Like, Obito really could just, restrain all of them with wood style and then kill them with 6 Paz rods if he chose to. So, I mean, if it isn't obvious, Obito should be able to deal with Hiruzen's era, even if you want to assert that the Yamato Guru statue is relative to Obito's rampage form. That's fine, and it doesn't have any real weight when discussing his much stronger form of Yellow Mask Obito. So yeah, Kamui suck, GG, wood style, GG, 6 pass rods, GG. Obito wins like 9 out of 10 times. listen. After Hiruzen, it's basically the same situation where Tsunade would scale even below the previous Hiruzen, but she does have some pretty formidable backup, including the likes of Sage Mode Naruto, Kakashi, and since in the last match we took Minato's era from the Nine Tails attack, I'm going to take Tsunade's era from the Pain Assault, meaning that Might Guy won't be there. So yeah, now if this match isn't even more clear than the last one, I don't know what to tell you. Obito is directly told by Minato, who fought Obito, that Obito is a bigger threat than Pain, point blank, period. I also think it's important to remember how Naruto, when needing more power, gained the 6th tail of his version 2 state, which would be nowhere near the full 9 tails that Obito would be relative to and bringing with him. This stage, Naruto is stated by Shukaku to really be in a tier of his own, which fits with how Jiraiya and Pain can break the back black belted blades along with Naruto and no one else. But yeah, for Naruto, I would also argue that he should lose to Obito, and almost none of his Toad abilities would really work on either Kurama or Obito. Then it becomes a pretty clear fight again. Alone, Kakashi's Kamui isn't that effective on Obito, so yeah, you guys could assume how this battle would go, but yeah, I'd say Obito also crushes this generation like 9 out of 10 times. And now I'm really talking about Hokage Kakashi after all the requests, and you're still ain't subbed. You're still not subscribed. Whatever. Now, we do have the 6th and final Hokage discussion, Kakashi, who many fans are starting to realize is truly the 2nd strongest Hokage, beyond the likes of even Hashirama, but there is still a section of the Naruto fandom who are seemingly lost in the abyss and still think that Kakashi is just a top tier Jonin level Hokage, when this is absolutely not the case. This Hokage Kakashi isn't even really comparable to the Kakashi you probably think of, and he is almost completely shown throughout both of his novels, which take place following chapter 699, where he is now fulfilling the role of Hokage, and despite having lost the Sharingan, is stated to have grown orders of magnitude since the time he fought Obito and Madara. Yes, orders, plural. Therefore making this Kakashi not just 1 order of magnitude, being 10 times, but actually instead 100 times stronger at a bare minimum than his previous War Arc variant, who is actually developing so fast and adapting to the war so much that even at the start of the war, Kakashi alone could deal with numerous V2 perfect Jinchuriki, with synchronization rivaling that of Pain in the 6th pass, which stayed in Data Book 3 to leave nothing unguarded, where he would then continue to fight and eventually even do battle with Rinnegan Obito, where he could put up his mud wall in response to attacks like the large-scale shuriken, when Obito deemed that he was worthy of fighting characters beyond himself, which he used there, where Obito would also use the Rinnegan absorption ability for the first and only time in the manga to absorb Kakashi's Kyuubi cloak, showing just how strong Kakashi is. He can not only time his Kamui perfectly to intercept Obito's full speed charge, but he can even have a Genjutsu clash with him as they fight also equally in hand-to-hand taijutsu. And while yes, Obito isn't at his full capacity, it's not in the way you think. Obito simply just isn't phasing through things, but in terms of his raw taijutsu speed and punching speed, he's the same, and this just goes to show how this fatigued and drained Kakashi, who is 100 times at a bare minimum slower and weaker than his Hokage form, is relative to this stronger Obito with a Rinnegan. See what this means? Kakashi now has the Purple Lightning, essentially a Raikiri that's far improved from its previous S-rank form due to no longer possessing the Sharingan. His stamina is no longer dookie, and he's even capable of holding a 30-foot tall quartz wall that surrounds an entire village for 3 days on end, while allocating chakra to said wall to heal damage that it was taking, showing a new testament to his stamina. The jutsu I always like to bring up for Kakashi is his fire style water mist, which is essentially a flaming bird-like mist that constantly protects him and even automatically and autonomously reacts to attacks that Kakashi doesn't care to. So with Kakashi, it's kind of a case far beyond both Hashirama and Minato, and he should absolutely be blitzing around this Obito and just nailing him with basically any attack he wants as soon as he materializes for literally any second of time. So yeah, Kakashi wins 10 out of 10 times. But what did you guys think? Do you guys enjoy this video and want a 3rd and final variation on Orochimaru and his attack? Well, let me know, because I did have fun writing this and would certainly enjoy doing it again if needed. But yeah, if you guys did enjoy, then please leave a like on this video or consider helping me get to 10K, as I'm very close. Come on, help your boy out. You watched the videos before, you know what's up. But more importantly, and as always, may God bless you all. Love you guys.